Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Kentuckiana Travel Ball Podcast. My name is T. Gridge. As always, I'm your host. Joined with me is my co-host, Rick Hines. What's up, Rick?
What's going on, T?
You know, man, another day, another dollar. We got another awesome show for you. Before we get into a special guest, I have to remind you that Guardian Baseball, which I am wearing their logo on my hoodie here, is our sponsor. Please go to guardianbaseball.com. If you use the code Kentuckiana Travel Ball, you'll get an additional 15% off whatever you order. They have everything. They're baseball people. They will help you. If you go to their store, you can try stuff on.
Oh, yeah.
Zev over there will help you out. So please go check out guardianbaseball.com. Today we have St. X head coach, Mr. Andy Porta. What's up, Andy?
Not much. Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. 3-time high school state champion. I know at least once, I think it may be multiple times, you were the Kentucky High School Baseball Coach of the Year. Coach, give us a little bit of your background.
I graduated from St. X in 1985, played both basketball and baseball. Went to Murray State University. I did not play at the college level. Did my bachelor's and master's down there, and then I wanted to get back to St. X as soon as possible. I knew I had such great coaches in both sports, basketball and baseball, that I knew I wanted to get back and coach at St. X. And they didn't have anything open that first year, so I worked 1 year down in Nelson County, down in Bardstown, and I enjoyed that. That was great people down there. I did 8th grade football. I did middle school basketball on the girls' side, and then I did varsity baseball down there for a year. And
awesome.
Luckily, after that 1 year, St. X called and said, "We've got an opening, and we'd love to have you." And I've been here ever since. This is my 30th year back at St. X teaching and coaching.
Wow. So obviously you've had a ton of success as the head baseball coach. Let's talk a little bit about your team. So what do you have coming back? What's the outlook? You know, I know putting kids into college is a big focus of yours. So let's talk a little bit about the St. X team.
Definitely pitching and defense. There for a couple of years there, especially the 2018 team, the 2019 team, we were more offense oriented and knocking a lot of home runs 1 through 9. But really, since this is my 10th year, 10th season, 11th year coaching, but 10th season coming up, really it's been pitching and defense has been our strengths, and I think that's going to be the case again. We've got at least 2 D1 arms at the varsity level right now. We're still working on trying to place a couple more of the young men, and defensively we're going to be very, very solid. Landon Akers at short is getting some D1 looks right now. Cooper Smith at third and can also play short, is trying to narrow down some D1 offers right now. Second's open, but we've got a couple of juniors that I think can slide in there. And really Cooper and Landon can play anywhere in the infield, and both of them are going to give us some innings on the mound too, so they're going to be interchangeable. Behind the plate, we've got Jake Bennett, and he's going the JUCO route down at San Jacinto down in Texas.
Yep.
First is a little bit open, but we've got plenty of guys to try over there, plenty of pitchers that can also play corner and play first. And then outfield, we've got some returning senior outfielders in Hayden Gunther, John Paul Jardina, and Matthew Schaffline, but we've also got some junior outfielders that are really going to push. So I would say outfield's kind of open, and first and second a little bit open, but defensive, I think we're going to be solid. The pitchers that we're looking at right now, Jake Greger is a commit to University of Louisville, and he's only a sophomore. If everything goes as planned, and you can't predict the future, especially with injuries, but Jake very well could be the first 4-year varsity pitcher at St. X.
Wow, okay.
That's
very first.
That's what he did last year. Is he basically pitched for us and then played JV ball defensively.
Well, that's crazy. So look, that's following up some impressive names. So the three of us will be at the St. X Hall of Honors dinner tonight, and we're inducting Matt Anderson, who was the #1 draft pick in the MLB.
Well, he didn't have a chance. He transferred in, so he only had a couple years.
Oh, that's a good point.
So.
That's a good point. He did transfer in as a sophomore, but or maybe as a junior, but still, there's some big time pitchers come through the X program.
Yeah, there really are, and we kind of pride ourselves on that. Taking care of arms, not overusing kids to where they have the serious arm injuries, but also developing them and send them to the next level. And, we're fortunate to send some to the D1 level, but we're also working hard to send some to D2, D3, NAIA, whatever their fit is.
You just added a new staff member, and this being a travel ball podcast, a lot of people know this name. Aaron Flaker is now a part of the St. X baseball staff. Talk to me about how that came about and what Aaron's role will be.
Yeah, Aaron's role is his title. Really, it's going to be pretty fluid, and he's going to be the guy that does a little bit of everything, and he already has done a ton for us. But officially, the title right now is Director of Baseball Operations / Player Development.
Okay.
So he's really helping us on both sides. He's helping us introduce kids to St. X coming from the middle schools and the grade schools, and he's also helping us place kids after St. X, which is really, really nice. You hit the nail on the head. He's well known in the travel ball community. So already he's got some connections right now that are just helping us out tremendously. And now he's kind of learning more about St. X. Braxton graduated last year, so he was a parent to the program. Now Tice is at St. X right now, but sometimes it's different when you get into the inner workings of the school. So he's helping us with shadows. He's helping us with visits. He's helping us reach out. And something we started this year too is we're renting out our field to travel ball programs. And last night we had a 13U Vipers team working out, and they actually asked the St. X coaches, hey, can you guys help us out with some defensive things? So myself and Joe Patzelt and Albo Linkenberg, we basically ran their practice for 2 hours last night. And a lot of that is from Aaron's connections, but we're opening it up and we're trying to get more and more people that, we want to help them out and let them use our facility, but we also want to kind of see if they can help us and steer some kids our way.
Well, listen, so we've got a ton of travel ball coaches that listen to this podcast. So we're going to have to talk a little bit about how someone would go about renting out the field and getting in front of the St. X coaching staff.
It's a pretty good idea, right, T?
I mean, it makes a ton of sense, right? So, maybe that's something we may need to look at doing, Rick. But, I mean, I know our kids, we've got several very St. X heavy kids that would love to be out there and be on that field. So that's a cool idea. And I really think it's a really good way to kind of get the travel ball community accustomed to what you guys do. So it makes a lot of sense.
It's a nice field.
Nice
facility.
And honestly, the administration has gone back and forth. There were periods where we're renting out the pool, we're renting out gyms, we're renting out fields, and then there were periods where, because of liability issues, we needed to back off on it. Well, the pendulum has swung in the positive direction right now, and we want as many youngsters on our campus as possible to see St. X. And
it makes sense.
Their parents, their siblings, we want the whole families.
From a marketing perspective, it makes a ton of sense. So talk to me a little bit about your feelings on travel baseball, because I know that look, travel baseball it's different today than it was 5 years ago, and then 5 years before that, and then when I was playing, it didn't even exist. So what are your feelings on the whole travel ball kind of deal altogether?
It's kind of that double-edged sword. I think it's I guess the negative first is sometimes you worry when somebody switches from organization to organization to organization. Is it hey, I'm not getting enough playing time here, so my dad's going to start a team here, and I'm just going to all of a sudden now I'm going to play short and pitch and
we've
bat
talked
third.
about that a lot.
Right.
So you're leery about that if a young man's been in 3-4 different organizations in the last 5 and 6 years. The positive side is obviously there's a need. For whatever reason, when we were younger, especially when I was younger, I know I'm a little bit older, but there was no travel ball.
Right.
You either played at Highview or Fern Creek or J-Town or Beachmont or St. Matthews.
Those leagues
or
were
Butchell.
competitive.
Yeah, those leagues were competitive, and then the elite players from there formed an all-star team, and you tried to play all summer with your all-star, and it's just that's a dying breed right now. So the travel ball has definitely replaced that and filled that void. This is my 11th season as head coach, and there's some programs that have been around for all of those years. There's some programs that were around for a year or two and they've disbanded.
Sure.
So you do have to kind of watch out for the daddy ball, if you will. But the programs that have been around, the kind of the tried and true programs, you have a lot of respect for them. And let's face it, they're turning out some really quality ball players. They really are.
Now, are you seeing a rise in the quality of player that you're getting because these kids are doing more baseball now before they get to you?
Yeah, and I'm not going to knock one program over another, but some of the programs that don't practice and just play a ton of games, sometimes those players are very talented, but they have a lot of bad habits that they need to break with the practice sessions that we provide.
Okay.
They're game ready, but then there's still some bad habits and some fundamentals that you need to straighten out. I mean, the programs that kind of have that balance of we're going to practice 2 and 3 days a week, and then we're going to play our tournaments. Those guys are definitely coming in, talented and prepared and fundamentally solid.
Look, there's some guys that are doing a really high level, right? Chris Burke's team, they're getting a ton of instruction. Ty Brown's team's getting a ton of instruction. I feel like our team, we do a really good job on the instruction piece. But I totally understand what you're saying there, and it kind of leads me. Sorry to interrupt you here, Rick, but kind of leads me to a question I was going to ask a little bit later. But being this is a travel ball podcast, and being that we try to provide value to not only coaches but players and parents, what's something that you would like to see coaches maybe do a little bit differently at the travel ball side? Maybe break some habits that you're seeing, kind of a trend. What should we be focusing on as travel ball coaches?
I would watch arms. I would definitely watch overuse. And I would suggest try to, get your players playing as many different positions as possible.
Okay.
Don't pigeonhole a kid that's 8U, 10U, 12U, 13U and say you can only play shortstop, you can only catch, because we tell kids all the time when they come to us, the more positions you can play, the more marketable you are, the better chance you have to make our freshman team, to make our JV team. And honestly, it translates to the next level. Is he athletic enough to have a college coach say, hey, I love his athleticism. I'm not sure he can play middle infield for us, but we can slide him to the corner or we can slide him to the outfield. But you don't want those kids that are pigeonholed to just one position for the last 6 or 7 or 8 years. And then, like I said at the beginning, take care of arms too. And it's tough. And sometimes you live and learn, and maybe you go to a tournament that you haven't been to in previous years, and all of a sudden you find out, your pool games are Thursday through Friday, and then all of a sudden you're expected, if you win the tournament, you're expected to play another 5 games on Saturday and Sunday. You just got to be careful with the arms and, watch pitch counts, even if the tournament isn't enforcing pitch counts. But I think the coaches have to be, responsible enough, and or their parents. Sometimes I've seen some kids where, the coaches just keep throwing them and throwing them and throwing them. And honestly, I'd like to see mom or dad come out of the stands and say he's done. He needs to play a different position because he's thrown too much, because that's always a fear too, is you only have so many bullets in those shoulders and elbows, and we don't need kids throwing their arms out at such a young age.
Do you have a number in mind? You think that makes sense?
No, I mean, everybody's individualized. With our guys at St. X, honestly, in my 10 previous seasons at the varsity level, I bet I can count on one hand the number of times we've had a varsity pitcher throw over 100 pitches. We just don't do it. The KHSA says they can go up to 120, but we just don't believe in that. It's just not necessary. But there's not like an exact number that I would say freshmen can't reach this number, sophomores can't reach this number. It's individualized. Some kids are physically more mature than others, but we definitely want to err on the side of caution. We really do. Another thing along those lines that it's a pet peeve of mine that I can't stand is, let's say the kid does play multiple positions and he's at second, but you're getting ready to maybe use him in relief. He's got to have a warm-up time other than the 7 pitches that the umpire gives him. I can't stand that when they just walk to the mound and say, can you throw? We've done that before, and it's perceived that we're doing that, but we make sure he threw while we were batting the previous inning. Or there's times we've subbed him out, and we can re-enter, and then we bring him back into pitch. But we will never take a kid cold from center field, from third base, and just say, can you go in 7 warm-up pitches? I don't like that. I just think that's wrong, and you're asking too much, because even if the kid's mature enough and he kind of eases into it, once the umpire says play ball and maybe the bases are low, that adrenaline starts, and he's going to try to throw as hard as he can right away, and you just have to worry about, again, taking care of that shoulder and that elbow.
Rick, he brings up a good point there. So we've got a kid on our team that when we start him in a fresh inning or start him in a game, he does really, really well. But if we bring him in a situation where there's kids on base and he's starting with a certain count, he doesn't fare as well as he does when he does with a fresh inning. I never really took into fact. We're typically bringing him out of the outfield saying, all right, go on the mound and pitch. We don't give him a whole lot of time to warm up. I would assume, I guess, I really never even thought about that. But even at 11, 12 years old, I guess that's something you probably need to look at doing, right?
And we've even done that and not used him. but the wheels are turning, and hey, what's our starter at?
Or just in case,
just
this
in case,
inning.
yeah. And we've done that. We've said, hey, why don't you go throw, or maybe he made the first out of the inning, and we know we only have 2 outs left, but let's sprint him over to the bullpen and let him get a dozen throws in right now, just in case we need him. And it turns out sometimes we don't need him, but at least we know
you're ready.
He's
ready
a little bit. Yeah,
that's interesting. It's something I'd never really thought about. Now, obviously, we warm them up before the game.
Sure,
right.
We do a little bit in between innings, and if the kid's on the bench, I'll have them go warm their arm up. But
sometimes it's like an emergency thing.
Yeah,
and it's like,
right.
this
inning's
going a little haywire. We need so-and-so to come in. And like you said, we've got enough bodies on the bench. We could sub somebody in while they warm up.
Right. But I tell you,
we don't do that.
We don't do that.
Typically.
And it's something that I think we probably should, and I think it gives our pitchers a fighting chance.
Yeah, they'll be more mentally prepared and physically prepared.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Something else that we do with our Wolves program is our whole goal is the next level. So it's not necessarily about wins and losses. We obviously we want to win, but we want to make sure they're prepared. They want to play in high school, they're going to have that opportunity. So we always tell them that when they get to high school and their coach says, "Where do you play?" the answer is going to be anywhere you need me. And that's kind of our goal. Is we're trying to move kids now. We don't do as much as we should, but we do try to move kids around quite a bit, get them some different spots. And we've told them every kid knows. If you ask any kid on our team, what position do you play? They know the right answer. What is it that you're looking for when these kids step on campus? When you're doing freshman tryouts, what makes the team and what doesn't?
A lot of times, that's a great question because we have a meeting with our parents before tryouts, and we meet with all of them, but typically it's more geared toward the new parents, the freshman parents, and we'll flat out tell them. There's really 3 categories that we're looking for if you want your son to make the team, and one of them's obviously baseball ability.
Yep.
Can he throw? Can he run? Can he hit? Baseball ability. That's up there. Number 2 is he athletic? Because we will keep, especially at the younger levels, we will keep some kids that run like a deer but maybe swing and miss right now, and we figure, hey, we can work with that.
Yeah.
We can fix that.
Yeah, a kid that's got a strong arm, but has no idea where it's going. We can work with that, especially at the younger level. So athleticism, baseball ability, and really the third one that a lot of parents don't understand. I just call it the intangibles. Is your son coachable? Because let's be honest, when you're deciding on those, we call them kind of those bubble kids, the last couple of kids. Because if we have 35 tryout in a particular year, if our number is 18, if our number is 21, whatever it might be, more than half of them are locks. More than half of them, the coaching staff can say, he's on, give him a jersey,
Right.
But when you're talking about those other guys that you're trying to fill out the roster, the intangibles really come into play. And we're human, we make mistakes, but you're trying to predict, from what we've seen with all of our preseason conditioning, all of our workouts, all of our tryouts, does he look like he's a coachable young man?
Yep.
Is he willing to try what we're asking him to do? And does he look like he's going to handle that role of potentially not being that starter? Mm-hmm. Because sometimes you'll have a kid that might have a little more talent, but he looks like he is ready to just pout because he's not going to be a starter. And you really don't need that cancer in the dugout that's going to bring everybody down. So those intangibles, I think, are real important, especially for those last couple of guys that you're going to keep on the team.
So we talk a lot about body language. We talk a lot about attitude. We talk a lot about being a good teammate, being able to play that sacrifice role if there's a guy on third, putting it on the ground to get him in, with one or less out. So how important is that aspect? How important is the body language and just the being a good teammate aspect?
Oh, I think it's huge. I really do, because like I said, bad body language can do a lot of damage. It really can. With the teammates, with the coaches, with the fans. So I think that is huge. I think you've got to be willing to kind of buy in and be a good teammate. And we tell them all the time, roles can change. So what your role is, on opening day on March 29th might be totally different than it is in the middle of April and in May. But, you've got to be able to kind of buy into that team first mentality. And our kids, for the most part, are pretty good. They really are. We do not have too many issues. So I don't know if we're picking the right ones when we do have cuts, or if the kids finally do just realize, hey, I'm a part of the team and I'm buying into this.
I'm buying in.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So if you're in my shoes, though, Coach, how do you coach that? How do you coach a kid that maybe doesn't have the best body language and try to make them understand, look, if St. X's coach is watching today, how do you want to act?
Right.
How do you coach that if you're in our shoes?
I definitely think you have to point out when he has the body language. You've got to correct that behavior. It doesn't need to be something where, you blow it out of proportion and you jump his tail and embarrass the heck out of him, but it might just be that little side conversation like, hey, what's going on? You don't look real thrilled right now. Something going on that we need to know about. Kind of pick these guys up. They're counting on you to support them. And then obviously reward them when they do it. Hey, that's a super job. Sometimes you have those post-game talks, and you're talking about the guy that, came in and shut him down out of the bullpen, or the guy that got the go-ahead base hit or the sac fly or whatever. But you also got to point out that guy that was on the bench, that was keeping the books, that was congratulating everybody when they came off the field, that was warming up your left fielder. You've got to make a point to kind of pick those guys out in front of everybody else too. And that kind of picks them up. Plus the guys that played that game, they know the expectation if they're out in the next game. Hey, I want to be just like him if I'm not playing tomorrow night.
That makes a lot of sense. That's a really great point.
Yeah.
So this past weekend we had a really tough loss. Lost to a good team, but really kind of what happened was we didn't execute in a couple areas where we needed to execute. So we didn't lay a bunt down when we needed to lay a bunt down. We didn't, we had bases loaded with no outs and didn't get the runs in that we needed to get. Maybe we hit a pop fly or whatever it may be. When we left, obviously the kids are devastated because the kids want to win. They're giving us everything they've got. Right. They always do. But how do you coach the execution part when everybody knows, I know I should have done that. The kid knows he's trying. He knows he should have gotten the bat on the ball. What's the best way to coach that when a kid's just frustrated and we don't want to put – I feel like I probably put too much weight on them, but how do you coach that the proper way?
Two things. In practice, you can set up situations and the kids, it'll take them a while to get used to this, but we do this all the time at St. X. Damon Amlung, one of our longtime assistants, he's a Army Corps of Engineers, so he's a genius. In fact, I taught him years ago.
Taught him everything he knew, huh?
I don't know about that.
He's a genius.
But everything doesn't have to be about the score. So sometimes we can set up little situational scrimmages, and all we're counting is how many bases were taken.
Okay.
And that's how you score. So you might not score a run, but you took 3 bases that inning collectively before you got your 3 outs. So you kind of put them in some pressure situations there, and that's all they're worried about is do my job. If it's move a runner over with a ground ball to the right side, I did my job. And maybe he didn't score. So, it might not directly translate into the game, but I think in the long run, I think it does. When you set those little goals of, if my job is to get that runner from second to third, 2-strike approach, and I'm just moving him over, hey, congratulations, you did your job. The second thing is, the more times they're in that situation, you hope they'll respond differently.
Oh, yeah.
You really do. And that's, from a scheduling standpoint, that's where you want to kind of keep putting the kids in that situation as much as possible. When I make out our schedule, I try not to put a single opponent on there that I think we're going to run rule. It's just not doing us any good.
Right. It doesn't do even if you are playing the guys that don't typically get to play, it really doesn't. I totally agree.
And it will still happen. We'll have, if you look at our schedule when the season's over, there might be 1 or 2 games that we run ruled somebody, but that's never a goal of ours when I make the schedule out.
Sure.
If it happens, it happens, but it's let's keep putting them in a tougher and tougher situation, and let's keep throwing the guy that hit the pop fly and didn't execute a bunt. Let's try to hopefully we can put them back in that situation at a later time and see what happens. Hopefully the more times they experience it, the better they get.
I don't have this written down, but I'm a small ball coach. Okay, we have a very fast team. I love to steal bases. I love to bunt. I love to put the ball on the ground. When
we're a pitching and defense team as well.
We are. But we're built on athletes. We're not built on kids knocking it out of the park. We're built on hitting it and running. How important is it? And the reason I bring this up, Coach, is I have some parents look at me like, you're not really going to ask my kid to bunt, are you really? How important is it for a kid to have that skill?
I think it's incredibly important. I really do. And I think it's 1 through 9. I think even your big boppers, so to speak, have to have the ability to put it down. And you might not ask them this year, but at some point a coach is going to ask them to bunt. Very rarely is somebody a, quote, home run hitter from 8U to the end of his career. At some point he's going to be challenged, and now I got to be that total baseball player
Yeah.
that can move runners over, that can
Yep.
get the bunt down. So I think it's incredibly important. We work on it a ton. From my baseball background, I say this a lot too. Sometimes it's just some kids just don't have the heart to bunt, unfortunately. You can drill and drill and drill. You can use live arm. You can use machines. You can crank up the velocity. But I say from my basketball days, some kids just don't have the drive to block out and rebound. And sometimes I think
That's true.
bunting's the same way. I mean, sometimes it has nothing to do with size, athleticism. It's just, do they want to do it?
Yeah.
And that's the toughest thing, is to get them to want to do it. We've tried rewarding kids before. We've tried disciplining kids. You didn't get the bunt down in practice. Go run a lap. I mean,
Right.
So I do not have the magic answer to that, but I think everybody needs to work on it. I think every single righties, lefties, big kids, slow kids, athletes, non-athletes, I think
It's an
everybody
important
needs
skill for every.
It really is.
Every
It
single
really
guy.
is. Yep.
So you mentioned run-rolling teams. It's interesting to us. So anytime we travel out of the area, we travel a decent amount, we feel like we fare pretty well to the competition that we're playing. If Tyke Brown's team goes and plays in Florida, they're typically winning. If Chris Burke's team's playing somewhere, they're typically winning. Baseball in our age group, and really travel ball period, in Kentucky is really, really strong. How do you feel the baseball talent stacks up in our area, kind of compared to not necessarily the entire country, but really kind of
Like the
regionally?
region, yeah.
Honestly, I think the top tier teams in Kentucky, I think, are right there.
With everybody.
Yeah, I really do. And obviously, I don't know about California, Texas, but when we travel, I know we hit some solid areas, North Indianapolis, and I've even had coaches and umpires. Yeah, you are playing the best teams in this region. When we travel to Cincinnati, we make sure we're playing the best teams in Cincinnati. If we go to Nashville, this year we're going to Georgia. We're picking up a couple teams in Georgia,
nice.
and I feel like we're right there with them. It's sometimes you got to convince the kids, because the kids are so into social media, and I look at it too, but I also have to take it with a grain of salt. And we're trying to be ranked nationally every year.
Sure.
That's one of our goals. You
Amen.
want to be ranked nationally.
Yep.
You also kind of laugh at it. How can we be ranked sixth in the nation compared to teams in Texas and
Right.
You
Florida
don't
and
even
Georgia?
play 'em.
California.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, but nevertheless, we want to be ranked nationally. You start reading about some of those teams, and all of a sudden, somebody in California has 9 D1 arms and 7 kids throwing 90 plus miles an hour. But only one of them can get on the mound at a time. And all we got to do is beat that. We
That
just
one,
have to
that's right.
compete against that one guy. The other 8 guys aren't hurting us on the mound right now. It's
Right.
just that one guy. And I feel like we stack up against those teams very, very well. It might be, like you said, it might be a lot of small ball and just compete. And, let's take that 0-0 game into the 7th inning and see what happens. But I really do. I feel like the top tier teams in Louisville and in this region can compete, with a wider.
nationally.
Yeah, I really do think so.
And the talent that you guys are typically getting on a year-to-year basis, you feel like is pretty high?
I do. Again, if we went, if I use my example of the California school that's got 9 D1 arms, well, if we played them a best-of-7 series, we're going to run into D1 arm every single time out, whereas we're not going to be able to put that out against them. So, yeah, we'd probably take our lumps. But in a one-game series, I like our chances. I really do.
I love it. That's awesome.
Nice.
Coach, how would you describe your coaching style?
Wow. I guess I'll go back to, again, we do a lot of talking with the kids and talking with the parents. And since I've taken over, we've kind of said we will always have these 3 goals in mind. So I guess indirectly it leads into coaching style. But first and foremost, we want to make sure we turn out just phenomenal young men.
Yep.
First and foremost, it's are the St. X baseball grads going to be men for others, men that can help out in the community? That's first and foremost. It has nothing to do about baseball skills, wins and losses. Our first number one goal is, and I tell the parents, I said, we're hoping to just continue what you all have already done as moms and dads.
Sure.
That's always got to be our first goal. So everything we do, as far as how we run practices, how we travel, how we treat people in public, that's our number one goal, is make sure we're turning out good quality young men for the city of Louisville, the state, the surrounding regions, and even nationally. Secondly, then it does come down to, we want to win state championships. We really do. And I know a lot of coaches will not say that, but I've said that from day one. And when I took over, gosh, it had been 31 years since the 81 state championship.
Right.
And I told the first team and the first parents that we want to win state. We really do. Even when I coached basketball with Joe Bergerman, and Joe Bergerman, he's a saint. That was always our goal is, come on, Joe, we want to win state. I don't care how good the other teams are. We want to win state. And then our last goal is more individualized. Let's get as many of your sons to the next level, whatever that next level may be, whether it's D1, 2, 3, NAIA. Let's get as many of your sons to the next level. But it's got to be in that order. The individual stuff has to be after the team, the state championship, and all the baseball stuff has to be beneath that goal of let's make sure every decision that we make is based on making sure we turn out quality individuals. So, roundabout way, I guess my coaching style is going to be looking at that first and foremost. We're going to correct those mistakes first and foremost. If we think somebody's making a bad decision that's an embarrassment to himself, to his family, to the program, to the school, we're going to correct those decisions right away because we do not want that to happen.
Yeah.
And then we'll start worrying about the baseball side of it and, the issues with how many of you guys want to play at the next level. And if they don't, that's okay too. I'm cool with that. I've had some phenomenal baseball players, great high school baseball players that say, Coach, I'm done after this.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate the honesty, and you just say, hey, let's go out on top. Casey Simon's a perfect example. Casey, hit he had a solo home run in the state championship in 2016.
Yeah.
It was his only home run in his St. X career. We win 1-0.
Yeah.
And Casey goes to UVA, and now he's in actuarial science working outside of D.C., but he had a phenomenal high school career. He could have played possibly at some Ivy League schools, could have played some D2, D3, and he just said, no, I'm done after this. I'm going to go to Virginia, be a great student, and now he's already that productive guy that's out in the community.
Can't beat that.
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
That's great.
I had a conversation last night with a girl who had just got done playing volleyball at Middle Tennessee State University. She only played 1 year. And it was interesting. She was talking about how the speed at Kiva and Assumption and the talent, and it was harder to play for those teams than it was her college team. And I think that your St. X and your Trinities of the world, you run into that a little bit.
Sure.
You could even get to a college somewhere and it's like, man, we had more talent in our high school team than we did even at that level. So it's interesting. Because it's really hard to make one of these teams when you go to one of all these boys' schools.
Oh, yeah.
You got to really be committed and really, really be a great player to even step foot on the field.
You got to stand out. You got to stand out.
And I know we talked about that off the air. Just the whole tryout process. There's a lot of high school coaches that don't have to experience that because they're a non-cut sport.
Right.
And some baseball programs. There's a lot of my friends that coach at other schools, and they take anybody that wants to play.
Yeah.
And they don't have to experience.
They're probably begging kids to play.
Yeah. And that's the toughest thing that we have to deal with is having to cut really good kids, first of all, just phenomenal individuals, just great. Somebody, I don't have daughters, but if I had a daughter, there's kids that we've had to cut that you say, if I had a daughter, I would want her to date him. Just a super young man and really good baseball players that you're right. It's tough. And unfortunately, we have to cut some of them. Some of them stick it out, come back and make the team. We've had a couple kids get cut as a freshman, make it as a JV. We had one young man get cut as a junior, make it as a senior. That's pretty rare. Wow. Some guys come back out and get cut a second time, which is really, really tough on him and the coaches.
Oh, I'm sure.
And then some of them go on to a different sport. I've joked around with the cross country and track coaches, and some of them, they'll go be a state champion in another sport at St. X. They'll go be a distance guy or a relay runner on the track team and win state. And we're their biggest fan. There's no hard feelings at all. Sometimes they might feel differently, but I understand it. I realize I become the bad guy when it comes to cuts, but I'm still going to support them whatever they go on to. I really am.
Well, it's interesting that you brought that up. A lot of these kids that go to St. X, maybe they don't make the basketball or the baseball team, but then they go play lacrosse and become a state champion lacrosse player, or the rugby team. It's interesting how
golf, who knows?
Well, golf's hard to make too, but
they're all hard to make.
Well, they're all hard to make. But what I'm saying is there's a lot of opportunity.
Right.
If you don't make a certain sport, and even intramurals.
Yes.
So you can go be a 2-sport athlete, but you don't necessarily have to be on the high school team. You can go play intramurals.
I was going to say, do any of these kids hang around, like let's say the kids that get cut that really love baseball, maybe not the best player, but they still love the sport. Do any of them hang around, be like a manager
That's exactly what they do. And it's interesting because, when we go through our tryouts, this year I'll have 12 coaches on staff, and we try. It's tough. There's 5 of us in the building, which I can promise you there's not another high school program in the state of Kentucky that has 5 baseball coaches teaching in the building. 3 of us teach math, 1 teaches science, and 1 teaches English. But the other 7 are paraprofessionals. 2 of them are lawyers, 1 of them's an engineer. They're out in the community, and when we have tryouts, I ask. I can't demand it because obviously they got to make a living, but I ask, let's get as many sets of eyes on these kids as possible. So if we have 35 freshmen trying out, there's 10, 11, 12 coaches watching them try out. Likewise with the JV, there's times there's 10, 11 coaches watching them try out. So we get as many sets of eyes on them as possible. And those kids that I mentioned that, if you had a daughter, you'd want your daughter to date him. They're just great kids, but maybe not as good athletically. There's times that the coaching staff behind closed doors will say, we got to let so-and-so go, but boy, wouldn't you love for him to come back and be manager? And don't you know, there's been a couple years where the next morning they'll come to my office and they'll say, Coach, I'd love to be a manager. Mm-hmm. And you're almost in tears. You're hugging them. You're like, you have no idea how much the coaches want you around. Yeah, and it's awesome. Really, really cool. And our managers, we treat them just like a teammate. They're in the dugout. We do not treat them like a second-class citizen, pick this up,
Sure.
They're a teammate. They're a part of the team. The only difference is they just don't get to wear a uniform, but they're wearing that state championship ring. They're in the dog pile. Some of them I treat them almost like assistant coaches because if they're really good on Game Changer or the book or whatever, hey, they're right there in my hip pocket. Yeah. So it is really cool, and it's neat that the coaches kind of pick those guys out sometimes, and then they come to us because it's tough. You really can't approach too many kids because sometimes it's like that double slap in the face. You already cut me, and now you're asking me to be the manager. Right. But the ones that really buy into it, and a lot of it's a credit to the kids that are in our program because, let's face it, we're nearly year-round with workouts. And those kids are working out August, September, October. We take some time off in November and December, and then January, February, it's back to 6 days a week before tryouts. They develop some bonds and some friendships, and you're right. They just love baseball, and they've got such great friendships with their buddies that did make the team. They want to be a part of it.
It says something a lot about their character. I'm going to, let's say, suck it up. I got cut, but I still want to be part of the program.
Yeah. Well,
what can I do?
It's also, if you care about your future at all, it's a big thing to put on a resume. Right. Colleges love seeing that kind of stuff. These kids that care about where they go to college and that type of thing, having those experiences are huge. So, Coach, let me ask you this. So, a friend of mine is a big-time basketball instructor, and he was telling kids, if you want to make a basketball team, go to the coach and figure out where their need is. So figure out what they need. Do they need that point guard that can really distribute and kind of run the show, or do they need that big guy? What is it that they need, and how can you fill a role that team needs? Does that play at all in baseball?
I think it definitely does from St. X to the next level.
Okay,
because we'll tell kids that all the time. You guys know there's tons of showcases out there, and you have to be careful because some of them are just kind of a cash cow. But if for example, a young man knows that a particular Division I program really needs middle infielders, right, well, then get on that campus. Get to their camp instead of just a generic showcase that coach may or may not be at. But we'll tell them, get to the campuses that you're interested in. Okay. They all have camps, Saturdays and Sundays. You get to those camps. And, as far as us, again, especially freshmen and JV, we never have a, quote, need. Yeah. We're going to take as many athletes and as many good baseball players as we can. Yeah. We really are. But at the varsity level, it's you keep an eye on what's going on at the JV and who can you plug in. Like I talked about, I'm pretty set. As long as we don't have injuries, we're pretty set at short and third. But who can we plug in at the JV level to play second base? Who can back up at short and third when those guys go to the mound? So we're filling needs within our own program. But as far as travel ball guys, middle school guys coming to the high school, just check off all those boxes of being a solid player, being a great athlete, and the intangibles, and the coaches will find a spot for you. They really will.
I think that makes a ton of sense. Yeah. I love that. All right, Coach. So again, we tried to provide as much value as possible here. Give us what your favorite drill is. Something that maybe we can take and use with our youth teams.
Oh, gosh. One that we do, I'm big on trying to involve as many kids as possible. I can't stand the old adage of one guy's taking BP and everybody's just standing around shagging. I can't stand that. And I think that's what turns a lot of kids off of baseball is when somebody says it's too slow, it's too boring. So at St. X, we try to do a lot of drills where there's multiple fungos, where there's lots of coaches and the kids are moving. So just one that comes to mind right now, we call it just cuts, relays, and long hops. And we've got 9 guys playing defense. You can do extra outfielders if you want to, but if we do, say, for example, with the varsity squad, typically I'll have 6 outfielders. Sometimes there's that 7th, but typically I have 6 outfielders. So they know first 3 outfielders are out there. We can fill in with our infielders. We'll even put a pitcher and a catcher in play. And then you either have your JVs or your subs or base running.
Right.
And basically it's, hey, base is empty, nobody on, nobody out. Here's a ball hit to left. Everybody should be moving. Depending on where the coach hit the fungo that day, if he hit it right at him, then yeah, we're giving him first, but we're throwing to second. If the coach hits it down the line, we can incorporate double cuts, but a lot of times for cuts, relays, and long hops, it's separate from double cuts, and so we're trying to run them to the line and run them in the gaps. We're not trying to put it on the warning track where we all of a sudden now we have double cuts. But you'll go through a whole series where the left fielder will make 2 throws, the center fielder makes 2 throws, the right fielder makes 2 throws. We start all over with runners on first and a batter. And now it incorporates, hey, we're trying to keep that guy from going first to third, but we're really stressing those head-high throws through the cutoff because we also don't want to keep we want to keep the batter on first to keep the double play intact. But everybody's moving. You got pitchers backing up. You got weak side outfielders backing up, potential throws, potential back picks. Everybody's moving. Then you do it again with runners on second. And then it's snappy, and they know after you make your second throw with a runner on second, you're trying to hose the guy at the plate. You're trying to keep the batter from taking second. Then all of a sudden, boom, the outfielders switch and new outfielders come on and you do it again. I'm not a big fan, especially a lot of guys that are two-way guys. We don't need to make dozens and dozens of throws in that drill.
Yep.
It can be 2 to second, 2 to third, and 2 to home, and you're done.
And you're done.
And we typically will do something like that. We've got a series of outfield drills that we might alternate maybe every other day or every third day. They know we're doing cuts, relays, and long hops. One of those off days, then we might incorporate the double cuts. But the whole time we're trying to take care of their arms, and we want everybody moving. I know some people will just have the outfielders throw to the bases, but there's never a runner. There's nobody backing up. But it's baseball, and outfielders are going to make mistakes. Somebody's going to have a short hop. The ball's going to get by. Well, we better see the people that are in position backing up. And that's one that I like to go to. It's pretty basic, but in fact, we're going to have a bunch of 8th grade. We've invited a bunch of 8th graders on campus next Tuesday to kind of watch one of our practices. And that'll definitely be one of the ones we do, and just the tempo of it.
Cool.
It's not a slow, okay, here comes the second ball. It's going to be rapid fire. Here's ball 1, 2. Here comes center field, right field. And it's actually a conditioning exercise, not only for the base runners, but even for the outfielders, because they got to hustle back and get ready to go again. The middle infielders got to hustle back to their position and get ready to go out to be their relay guys. So it's a good one, and like I said, we just call it cuts, relays, and long hops.
I like it. I think that one's good. You got any questions on that, Rick? I want to use this, so let's make sure we know how to do that.
No, not really.
when you said that you had a batter, no, obviously you're using a fungo to do that. Right. So where's the batter running from?
A lot of times, if we want to challenge the defense, we'll put a cone in foul territory, and the line of batters will start at that cone. I would say if you drew a line from third base to home and then continued towards the dugout, sometimes we'll put that cone even with that.
Got it.
So he's a little bit, I know he's not in a straight line, but a lot of times we'll say the moment coach tosses the ball up in the air, you can take off. Okay. So you do get a little bit of a head start there. The biggest thing, too, is you want your runners to be aggressive but not stupid.
Yep.
We want this to be realistic. I don't want somebody to just jog to first and say, I got no chance at second. So we'll have coaches in charge of runners and coaches in charge of fielders. Yeah. So a lot of times I'll roam the outfield. Coach Lyons might roam the outfield. We might have Coach Hamlung might be swinging the fungo. Coach Cotty might be in the runner's ear, and he's basically, urging and yelling at those guys. You can make it go 2, go 2. You can go first to third. Because if you just let the kids do it on their own, they're going to kind of jog it in and say, okay, I moved up my 90 feet, but there's no chance I could have made the extra base. Now, we're going to push them without being stupid because we don't need them. It does us no good if, they run halfway from second to third and stop at shortstop and just say, I never would have made it.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
The trail runners are real important too. We really stress that.
I like
the trail
that.
runners. And again, it goes back to, in fact, I said this to that Vipers team last night because we did a version of this, but obviously with 13 you guys, it's not quite as sharp, and it was the first time. But I said, raise your hand if you're a two-way guy, and almost all of them raised their hand. And I said, when you're on the mound and it's a potential rough inning, the best way to get out of it is a double play ball.
Right.
So when you're an outfielder, don't airmail your cutoff man and let the batter go to second. The worst thing you can do there is they just keep trading places, second to home. You've got to make a low throw where that batter has to stop at first. Now maybe it's first and third, but the pitcher can roll a double play ball, and we might be out of the inning. So the trail runners are incredibly, incredibly important.
Interesting. I like that. I love that drill, though. I think that's really, really cool. Now,
Yeah.
Coach, you mentioned that you're going to open up the field to potential teams that want to rent it and come out and be a part. How can somebody get a hold of you and do that?
Yeah, right now the administration got with us and they said the potential dates are Mondays and Wednesdays.
Okay.
If we expand to more days, that decision will be made later. But basically, they can either email or call me at school.
Okay.
And I'll let them know whether something's already booked up or not. We actually had one organization, when they heard about it, they said, we'll take every Monday and Wednesday for the rest of the year. And I said, I appreciate it from a scheduling standpoint. It would have been super nice for me. But I said, we want to open this up to as many organizations as possible.
Well, it's a marketing tool.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
It's getting kids on campus.
And we don't want to tie ourselves to just one travel
Organization,
program.
right.
We would
You
love
want
to be
everybody,
open to
yeah.
all of them.
No,
Absolutely.
It makes sense.
Yeah, so if they just email or call me at school, and right now it would be like 6 to 8 on Mondays and Wednesdays.
Perfect. Coach, thank you so much for being here. This was awesome.
Yeah.
I hope that people got a lot out of this. I know I certainly did. If nothing else, people are learning different styles and they're getting ideas on how they can run their program. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Once again, GuardianBaseball.com. If you use the code Kentucky and a Travel Ball, you'll get an additional 15% off. Rick, let's roll it out.